talk about a classic case of an unexpected experience that we leaders and trainers and consultants use as an example to help organizational leaders learn how to deal in disruptive times. So I'm taking us back to 1949 to the mountains of Montana, an area that is very forest heavy, no roads in or out to many of these areas, and it's very, very remote area. Now, this is the area specifically that we're looking at is called Mann Gulch. Have any of you heard of the Mann Gulch situation or the Mann Gulch fire? If so, let me know, and then feel free to jump in with lots of commentary today. So what happened is that a forester on the ground sighted a fire and called in the U.S. Forest Service's smoke jumpers, which was at the time a fledgling, a new organization of people trained to parachute out of aircraft into these remote areas without any roads in and out, and then to fight fires. So that's what we have here is this crew going in to fight this fire. They landed at about 2 p.m. and Wag Dodge, their leader of the group, assessed the fire along with the forester that had first seen it and sighted it. And they called it a 10 a.m. fire, a very manageable fire that they would have tamped out by 10 o'clock the following morning after they landed the afternoon before. They expected to get some food, get some energy, then start doing whatever it is firefighters do to stop forest fires, and they would be out of there by 10 o'clock the next morning. Instead, within hours, all but 3 of the crew, so 13 other firefighters, were dead. What happened in this situation is what we're going to look at. A manageable fire that instead became a tragedy. And why is this case looked at so frequently as a cautionary tale, but also a lesson of a learning opportunity for us in disruptive times in our organizations today? That's the strategy that we are going to be taking today in our conversations. So, as I mentioned, this is an actual photo, a historic photo where some of the victims are being removed from the site. And we're going to really be studying the lessons learned from this Mann Gulch, Montana, 1949 episode. So first thing we're going to do is watch a short clip. It's about 3 minutes of a forester from the U.S. Forest Service. He's on site years and years and years later. This is a decade ago. He's on the site of the Mann Gulch tragedy, and he's going to talk you through just a few of the things that happened during this short window of time between the landing and the deaths. The question I'm going to ask you when we come back together after watching this 3-4 minute clip is, what went wrong? What went wrong? And more importantly, what lessons can you learn from this? How will you change your leadership and your communication behaviors to make sure that that you keep fires contained, not literal fires, of course, but the figurative fires that we all face day in and day out. So what goes wrong, and what did you learn that will change your behavior? Those are the questions we're looking for. What went wrong? There are so many things. And of course, nature itself wasn't helpful here in that at one point the fire does jump the ridge and comes on to the other side. So there are some things in our world that are completely beyond our control. And it's a matter of just how do we manage those unexpecteds. But outside of that piece, the unexpected disaster that could not have been anticipated, what do you think went wrong? And what could have happened differently? What do you think went wrong? Or what did you learn from listening to this clip about the Mann Gulch disaster? Any thoughts on that? Now, I think that as you're thinking about that, I wanted to point out some of these parallels because at some point we might be like, hey, I don't deal with forest fires. What does this have to do with me and my leadership? But again, we do deal with fires. They're literal fires, not or figurative fires, not the literal ones, but we have these little crises, these little emergencies. And like the forest fire, if we don't tamp it out early, it can grow and become exponentially worse. So you've got just one angry customer, or you've got one disgruntled employee, or you've got one conflict that's a problem in the workplace. You've got one employee who doesn't perform well. You've got one vendor that keeps letting you down or disappointing you. But that one little situation could just grow and grow and grow until you've got wildfire on your hands. So let's make sure that we recognize there are more parallels here than we might have first assumed. Another piece, and you don't really catch this from the clip, is that the way the teams were assembled back in the day was that they just pulled whoever was in the area that had been trained in smoke jumping. So this particular crew had somebody from Idaho, somebody from Washington, somebody from Montana, and they didn't know each other very well at all. And so that might be a part of this puzzle as you're thinking about what went wrong. How would this have been different if this had been a cohesive team that had acted together many, many times rather than this disparate team of individuals thrown together and all they had was the flight in, the drop, they grabbed some food once the supplies were dropped to the ground too, and then they started fighting the fire together. How would it have been different if this had been a long-term team? But like that situation, we don't always have control over the length our team has been together or how fast turnover is. So we too have teams that may, or so many of us work 100% remote. Maybe your teams don't know each other very well. So that would be another parallel where this case seems like it has nothing to do with us, but maybe it does. Like this, the stakes are sometimes high in what you're dealing with. Hopefully not life and death high, like Wag Dodge, the leader of this team, but you do face some pretty high stakes in the types of work that all of you do. The unexpected happens, that's a piece of it. And communication is hard. They talked about how the men, there was smoke, there was the noise from the fire. We don't have fire noise, but there's so much noise to our communication in terms of information overload and other messages that people are being bombarded with that figuratively or literally people's headspace, it's noisy. And so getting your message through can be really hard. So in many ways, I think that you can see that there are a lot of parallels between what happened at Mann Gulch and what we want to prevent from happening in our own organizations. Okay.